Hey, what's up, all my duckies out there? I'm Duuz-Diz-Din, and I'm coming at you again with DuckTales, the 2017 reboot. This time it's Season three's Episode 16, titled The First Adventure. Picking up at Shush HQ in London in the 1960s, thank you, text on the screen, we pick up with Agent 22 once again arresting Black Heron for the umpteenth time for trying to change. I think it was one of the Washington monuments. I think? Not sure. But we then cut off to see that Bradford Buzzard actually used to work for Shush back in the day, even going so far as to suggest to the director Ludwig von Drake that they basically take over the world because of all the chaos that they stop. It causes more chaos in order to stop that chaos, which ends up causing a lot of cost for the company. But Ludwig is none too keen on any of this, thinking that, they ended up hiring Bradford because of his mom, I think it was, but while Bradford is smart, he has a little too many villainous ideas. So Drake's like, yeah, you need to cut that out, kid. You'll go far, but not with that kind of thinking. But Bradford catches sight of Black Heron and ends up proposing to her the suggestion of creating the uh, Organization for World Larceny, OWL, an organization all about gaining anything in the world and taking things over in order to rein in the natural chaos of the world. However, Black Heron has a better idea. Put an F in front of it and make it a villainous organization, the Fiendish Organization for World Larceny. Although, while Bradford Buzzard isn't too keen on the whole villain angle, as he finds that the whole villain thing just causes more trouble than anything else, he allies with Black Heron. So we see that Black Heron and, Bradford were the creators of FOWL, of nothing else. And I was kind of wondering that, FOWL is seen as this massive organization, but we didn't really get to see, what a lot of its operatives were doing beforehand. So to see it have such humble beginnings is fascinating. We then cut to, I'm guessing, like a few decades later, in like the 1980s, 1990s, I'm thinking 1990s probably, where we see Scrooge with some old school cell phones and an alive Ducksworth. Like, wow, cool. Good to see him. And he is a very busy man, really going in to take over the corporate world. And he's been told that he has a specific meeting that he has to attend to, and that is the fact that his niece and nephew have arrived, Donald and Della. And as it turns out, his sister Hortense had sent them there because they had put a firework under their father's chair. It blew up and he got sent to the hospital. And funny enough, this is actually the backstory of Huey, Dewey, and Louie that comes from the storyline called Donald's Nephews. So it's very fascinating that that ended up being their introduction there. I can't remember if during that one time when Dewey went back in time, if that was explained there, but it's just fascinating to see that backstory applied to them and not the triplets. But it couldn't be since the triplets ended up with Donald since they were babes, so of course it would have to be something like that. But Scrooge doesn't have enough time to be dealing with children. And whereas Donald isn't too keen on Scrooge because he's the man, Della is all in because of the various adventures that Scrooge has been on in the past. But Scrooge says he doesn't adventure anymore, and all of that was just to gain wealth. Now he's all about the corporate world. That is, until he receives a communication from Shush. It's Agent, well, Director 22, I guess. Von Drake has long since passed by this point, but she has gotten word of the location of Yellow Beak's treasure. Now, this actually comes from a storyline called Donald Duck Finds Pirate's Gold, the whole yellow beak and his treasure and all that good stuff. So a lot of Karl Barks and Don Rosa references in this episode. So she's sending Scrooge because apparently a lot of shush information has been leaked to FOWL somehow. And so she's sending in the most trustworthy operative that she has, namely Scrooge McDuck. And of course, Della wants to get in on this, really wanting to adventure with her Uncle Scrooge. But Scrooge shoots the two of them down. Adventuring is no place for a couple of kids. But Della is persistent, and Scrooge only gives in when Duckworth makes it known that if he has to take care of the children while Scrooge is away, he will have to be paid overtime. So naturally, Scrooge is a penny pincher, and Della is very engaged with the pilots because she wants to be a pilot in the future. Scrooge then tells about the legend of what they're going after, the thing that Yellowbeak stole back in the day, and that is the papyrus of binding. If you write on the papyrus, what you write down comes to be. And it was stolen long ago by a pirate named Yellowbeard. But be wary, as anything you write down on the papyrus will come true. So watch your wording. Very much like a monkey's paw. You could say, I wish I had some ice cream. You end up with a mountain of ice cream that you end up freezing to death because it's just covering everything. So be careful what you wish for. But Scrooge ends up receiving word from 22 that Black Heron was sighting in his location, and she reveals herself as one of the pirates, taking Bradford with her, jumping off the plane, leaving them to plummet into the ocean. But thanks to the minor amount of flight simulations that Della has done, she manages to gain control. While Bradford, on the ground of the island that they were searching for in the Bermuda Quadrangle, I think they call, uh, I swear, it's such a weird naming convention when it comes to that. But Bradford questions why they didn't just wait for the plane to land. But Black Heron's on that, villain stuff. She's just like, oh, but where's the fun in that? But she ultimately ends up being proven wrong as Della successfully manages to land the plane. And so Scrooge, though he was impressed with all this, doesn't want to let on that he thought that was pretty cool. So they set off, only for Donald to be trapped in one of Black Heron's traps that send him flying up into the air, where he actually spots the ship of Captain Yellowbeard. So he points Scrooge and the gang in the right direction, and Black Heron says that they'll simply follow them and steal the papyrus once they manage to get it. Which Bradford is all for, but when Black Heron brings up writing in the papyrus, Bradford is having none of that because Bradford is very genre savvy. He's just like, once you write in it, it'll go terribly wrong. We ask for a mountain of cash, we're crushed under a whole bunch of money. Like, no, do not write in the papyrus. So they travel on as Scrooge regales Donald and Della with his various past adventures, one of which is actually the story of the treasure of the Golden Sons, one of the very first original DuckTales adventures. So, very nice, very cool. But Scrooge was not about the adventure. He wanted gold, he wanted souvenirs, he wanted something. But Della and Donald are just like, but wasn't it fun? Didn't you actually enjoy all of that? Didn't it get your blood pumping and your heart racing? And Scrooge kind of considers this. But they come upon the correct ship and they use Scrooge's special cane in order to propel themselves over to the other half of the ship, finding the remains of Captain Yellowbeard where he wrote down everything that had happened. That He had asked to be able to escape from the Spanish Armada only to be run adrift on this island. He asked for water for his crew only for them to drown on dry land. And his final wish was simply to be released of the curse, only for him to die from that request. And thus the papyrus erases all that information because once you write down on it, the information comes into reality and then it just kind of evaporates. But Scrooge is more intent on getting in contact with Shush and getting out of there. But while they're distracted, Bradford goes for the papyrus, only for Black Heron to come crashing in, giving away their position. And as Black Heron does battle with Della and Donald, Scrooge spots Bradford and immediately realizes, wait, you're Bradford. You were at my Christmas party. You work for Shush. You're the spy. He immediately puts two and two together and tries to call Shush and let Agent 20, Director 22 know, only for Black Heron to crush his phone. But she then grabs the papyrus and writes down that Scrooge's sidekicks on this mission shall perish, only for nothing to happen. Ultimately, because this isn't a mission, it's an adventure, and they're not his sidekicks, they're his family. Once again, wording, ladies and gentlemen, get it right. What's that classic wording? It's just like, it's the difference between knowing your shit and knowing your shit. Like, get that phrasing right, you know, or else you might end up being, you know. And Black Heron ultimately ends up bringing Yellowbeak to life in this really cool looking skeleton form, and it does battle with Scrooge. So while he's dealing with Yellowbeak, Scrooge sends Donald and Della after Black Heron, which I'm like, I don't know about that. They're dangerous criminals. But Bradford is none too keen, and Black Heron ends up being tripped by Bradford losing the papyrus, but Bradford is laying into her, saying that you gave away our position. Now Scrooge knows who I am. You've compromised everything that we've been doing. You wrote in the papyrus, for heaven's sake. It was dangerous and it was ill advised, but Black Heron completely ignores him, especially when Donald and Della come in to do battle with her. But when Black Heron chucks Della off the side of the ship, Donald loses his shit, honestly. He loses his shit. I'm trying not to curse, but And Della uses that opportunity to try to go for the papyrus. As Scrooge continues to, do battle with Yellowbeak, Della takes this opportunity to ignite a cannon, destroying Yellowbeak. And they spot Bradford going after the papyrus, but Scrooge manages to catch up with him, pointing out the fact that, oh, all this time you were a villain, and now that I know, we will hunt you and your kind to the ends of the earth. Now that we know who you are, you can't hide. So Bradford writes down in the papyrus that as far as the ducks are concerned, Bradford was never here, and thus he disappears, leaving Scrooge with no knowledge of Bradford's involvement with Shush. An interesting write around and all that. Making sure that, Scrooge would have no idea that Bradford was an agent of FOWL, if only his director as well. But Black Heron holds the twins hostage, threatening to eliminate them. Once again, potential child murder. Always a fun time. But Scrooge takes the opportunity to write down that the papyrus be lost once again, and that only an heir of Scrooge McDuck would be able to find it, ensuring the lives of the twins. And as the papyrus goes to be lost once more, Black Heron chases it, falling off the edge of the ship, leaving behind only her robotic arm. For like the umpteenth time. This always happens with her. You need better workmanship on that arm, lady. But The twins are excited over this adventure, and Scrooge, having had so much fun, even calls up 22 asking for extraction so that he can get home and put somebody else in charge of McDuck Industries. That way he can spend some more time adventuring with his niece and nephew. Unfortunately, he ends up bringing on Bradford because, as far as Scrooge is concerned, Bradford is a member of Shush, someone who attended his Christmas party, and a very no nonsense by the rules person who will keep McDuck Industries from falling into chaos. Very clever, very fascinating, very interesting. Just seeing the rise of Bradford Buzzard. But it's always fascinating to see a villain who doesn't see themselves as a villain. Bradford really believes that by bringing the world under his rule, he'll be able to run things in a way that won't cause the calamity that normally goes on around Scrooge and all these villains. He's trying to do something good, but he's going about it for all the wrong reasons. A anti-villain, if you would. I think that's the terminology. I might be wrong about that, but a very fascinating chapter in Duck history, how Donald and Della ended up hanging with their Uncle Scrooge and all that good stuff. I have to assume that their parents' name never came back for them because that's basically how things went with the triplets. Huey, Dewey, and Louie were left with Donald, and ultimately Della and their father never came back because I guess he got injured, and the only information we ever got about their parents was that Della was in space, and that's why she never came back to get the triplets. And honestly, that storyline having come out only a few years before the start of this DuckTales series, rewriting the entirety of their backstory as to why the triplets never got picked back up by their parents is fascinating. And I love how at every turn the writing staff includes Easter eggs and references and just like really nice in jokes. Also, something worth noting is that young Donald unfortunately doesn't have the same voice actor as previously. Previously he was voiced by Russi Taylor, who had done the voices for the triplets for the longest time. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2019, so voice acting for young Donald went to Christina V, who is the voice of the miraculous Ladybug herself. So, a very nice little bit of reference. Also, check out my Miraculous Ladybug reviews. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below on this episode. Did you enjoy this rise of Bradford Buzzard and how Donald and Della ended up joining with their Uncle Scrooge? Or did you find it wanting? Tell me that and more in the comment section below. If you liked this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you never miss out on another DuckTales 2017 reboot episode review. And until then, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.